I was going to say there's plenty of popcorn.
Good. This is a little something.
Fatten up on popcorn.
Nothing for you. We've been getting from the very end.
When is that?
Really?
Y'all make me nervous. I'm going to say it again. Y'all make me nervous.
We're intimidating.
Speaking to us specifically.
Oh, no. Judy and I are sitting in here, and it's 8 till 6.
And nobody's here?
It's Judy and I, and then all of a sudden, it's like a normal church service.
It's indifferent to this church.
Oh, no. No, not this church. It's Texas. I believe it is a Texas thing. Well, good evening. How you guys doing? Been a long week. Good. We were deployed for 4 days at 480 RN.
What is?
Well, we had 4 tornadoes in Austin on Sunday night. Two up north, 2 down south. So I'm going to keep talking because if I don't, I may fall asleep. You talk to me. So tonight's going to be sort of fun. It's the fire. The story we've all learned.
Yeah, when we were little.
Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So we're going to hit this and we'll have some fun with it. Because look, you know this story, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you had this when you were in elementary, so you got it all down. It's not like last week. No, nothing confusing about this. So, just relax for a little bit. You're gonna go. We'll relax with a nice little worship song, and then go right into it. And then, like I said, I'm gonna try to stay awake. If in 13 minutes I'm back in the back snoring, somebody come get me. All right? Here you go. Take us out.
May look like weakness to you, but that's not the way it is. I'm down on my knees, facing the truth that the strength that I need is His. I'm not giving up, and I'm not giving in. I'm surrendering. I'm dying to live, and I'm losing to win. I'm surrendering, surrendering. Been in this battle before. I've tasted defeat, and I know that at the end of myself, there's an open door that is just the beginning of hope. I'm not giving up, and I'm not giving in. I'm surrendering. I'm dying to live, and I'm losing to win. I'm surrendering. Oh, embracing God's will, rejecting my own, forsaking my needs.
you stand for? In an age where so many seem to be bowing down and giving in to a culture of ungodliness, Christians should be willing to stand up for God and for biblical principles. But if you think this problem is only unique to us because of the times in which we live, you are wrong. From the beginning of time, God has called on his people to stand up for truth and not bend under cultural pressure. Welcome to the Hall of Prophecy. In this place, we can rediscover and witness the strength and courage of 3 Hebrew young men who would not bend a knee to a false god. Because of their faith, these 3 men were elevated to a place of prominence in Babylon. Respected, admired, revered, these exiles lived for God even in an unfamiliar land, a strange and godless culture ridden with sorcery, witchcraft, and carnality. And when they would not bow, they were to be burned. So the 3 courageous Hebrews stood, and stood again, and then another stood with them. When it was all said and done, in standing for God, they changed the world around them. So who are these 3 fireproof men who took a stand and would not bend a knee to a false god? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, the firemen, agents of Babylon. In the days leading up to the celebration, gilded chariots and plush carriages disrupted trade and snarled the streets of Babylon as governors and administrators and their entourages arrived from every province in Nebuchadnezzar's empire. Men and women in rich linens and silks paraded into the palace to pay homage to their sovereign. On the eve of the celebration, Nebuchadnezzar hosted a sumptuous feast. The enormous dining hall filled and emptied 3 times so that the thousands of guests could be served. At each sitting, the king welcomed the diners and encouraged them to eat and drink their fill. He invited them to assemble at the 10th hour the next day at the newly constructed ziggurat on the plain of Dura, just outside of the city. Though no one said so explicitly, it was understood that the invitation was compulsory. No one would dare to be absent. At the 10th hour the following day, several thousand prominent men and women stood on the plain facing the temple. Atop the 12-tiered tower sat a granite pedestal, and soaring above the pedestal at a height of 90 feet was a towering object shrouded in linen. When the bell chimed the 10th hour, King Nebuchadnezzar appeared, sitting high in a gilded ivory chair. His chair was mounted on 2 parallel poles and supported by 8 robust slaves. They carried him up the stairway and sat him in the chair at the base of the pedestal. Nimitar then mounted the steps, dwarfed by the towering structure behind him. A hush came over the crowd. Noble guests, His voice rang out over the plain. It is no secret that there is turmoil among the provinces of the empire over religious differences. Each province seems to have its own local deity, which the people have worshipped for centuries. There's Moloch and Baal and Ashtaroth and Dagon, Ishtar, and a host of others. And such fragmentation breeds strife and threatens the unity of the empire. What this empire needs, he said, is a single God all people can bow down to in harmony and unity. Therefore, King Nebuchadnezzar wishes to add a new God, one the entire kingdom can worship together. This will bind us together under his benevolent headship. Nimitar continued, in a moment you will have the great honor of witnessing the birth of this new God. After the veil is removed, you will have several moments to gaze on his glorious face. And then the orchestra will play a hymn devoted exclusively to him. And when you hear the first chords struck, you will have the privilege of bowing on your faces as the first to give him worship and honor. The chief astrologer paused briefly, and then his tone grew more severe. Anyone who fails to do so will suffer the penalty inflicted on all who dare to defy the king's edicts. He will be cast into the furnace of fire. Nimitar stepped down, and the veil above him slid away, revealing a towering image of a man made out of pure gold. The guests gaped at the magnificent stature, its golden surface gleaming in the morning sun. Look at the face, someone said. It's Nebuchadnezzar himself. He's our new God. And at that moment, the first notes of the hymn sounded, and everyone in the crowd fell to their knees as one. Everyone, that is, except for three. Before an hour had passed, the door to the throne hall opened, and the king sat glaring as Arioch marched Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego toward him. And when they stood before the throne, Nebuchadnezzar's anger melted into dismay. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, tell me it isn't true. You three have served me long and well. I've given you wealth and position. Surely there's some mistake. Surely you couldn't have defied me as your accusers claim you have. We had no desire to defy you, Shadrach answered, but we must be loyal to our God. We can't bow to any other God. You are too rigid for your own good. I should cast you into the furnace immediately, but because you have served me well, and for the sake of Daniel, I will do what I would not do for anyone else in the empire. I will give you another chance. I will overlook today's affront and spare your lives if you swear that you will bow down to my image tomorrow. And if I am willing to do that for you, surely you can do this small thing for me. What do you say? Abednego stepped forward. O Nebuchadnezzar, we can answer you only one way. If you sentence us to death by the furnace, our God whom we serve will deliver us from the flame. But even if he does not, know that we will all stand firm and never serve your gods. We will worship our God, but we will never worship your golden image. Not today, not tomorrow, or any other day. The king's face reddened. You fools, he bellowed. How dare you continue to defy me? You trample my mercy as if it were dirt under your feet. I will endure it no longer. Nebuchadnezzar turned his back on the three friends. Arioch, he called, get these ungrateful traitors out of my sight. Have the execution furnace heated to 7 times its normal temperature. Nimitar, send messengers to all the guests, inviting them to the square in 3 hours. I want all of them to witness the fate of those who defy me. Go on, do it now. The square was a flagstone paved court set before an open-fronted execution furnace. As large as the plaza was, it could accommodate only a fraction of Nebuchadnezzar's guests. And an hour before the appointed time, it was already filled with curious officials watching as workers coaxed the glowing coals into bellowing flames. The furnace itself was a stone structure some 30 feet square with walls 4 feet thick to contain the intense heat. It was vented by an opening that measured 6 feet in diameter in the center of its low domed roof. The opening also served as a portal where victims who were dropped into a chute were sent into the scorching furnace. Steps made of stone ascended the left side of the dome, providing guards access to the opening. Soon the fire roared and black smoke belched from the hole in the roof. Nebuchadnezzar arrived and took his seat on the elevated platform opposite the furnace, flanked by his chief advisors and astrologers. And when the king was satisfied with the heat of the flame, he nodded to Nimitar, who rose and addressed the crowd. Esteemed governors and officials of the empire, it is with deep regret that we announce the traitorous action of 3 of your peers, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego of the Babylonian province. They have refused to worship the king's image. A murmur of surprise rippled through the crowd. Today these men will be cast into the furnace of fire, and the same will be done to all who defy the king's edict. He turned toward the holding cell at the left of the square. Bring out the prisoners, he called. Let the execution begin. The cell door opened, and the 3 prisoners stepped out, escorted by 6 guards. The condemned men held their heads high. Their expressions were serene. They showed no trace of fear. After binding the prisoners' hands and feet, the soldiers carried them up the steps of the dome in pairs, one gripping the prisoner's shoulders and the other his feet. The overheated blaze now shot upward through the vent. Even before they reached the top, the guards flinched from the blistering heat. And the only chance of surviving was to swing their victims into the opening quickly and dart away before the heat overcame them. As they heaved their burdens into the flame, screams of agony pierced the air, not from the prisoners, but from the guards. The spectators watched in horror as the soldiers and their clothing burst into flame, and the skin of their faces burned away, and they tumbled, writhing and shrieking, down the sloping dome and fell to the pavement below, dead. Nebuchadnezzar ignored the guards, peered into the flames, searching for the 3 convicted men. He spotted them struggling to rise from the glowing embers, but something wasn't right. Their clothing and their skin seemed intact. Surely he wasn't seeing things clearly. In the next instant, all 3 men stood up, their hands and feet now free. The king squinted and looked again. Now the men, still seemingly unharmed, were walking around in the furnace and speaking calmly as if they were meeting in the hallways of the palace. The king looked again, and he was startled by what he saw. Is that another figure in the fire with them? Impossible. He rose and stepped closer for a better look. Yes, there was surely a 4th man in the fire. Nimitar, he croaked, didn't we just cast 3 men into this furnace? That's correct, my king. Then tell me why I see a 4th man with them, and if you can call such a man as magnificent as he is. King Nebuchadnezzar didn't wait for a reply. Forgetting all dignity, he leaped down the steps and ran toward the furnace. Shadrach, Meshach, Abednego, come out of the flames. Moments later, the 3 Jews stood on the plaza facing the king as the fire continued to rage behind them. Wow, are you quiet? That's the story. You say, when did you make that up? No, I didn't make that up. That's right from the Bible.
And you were just as quiet. This is a kid's story, right? We can't learn anything more from this kid's story, right?
We can always learn something.
Yeah, we always can. So let's start by just putting this into context. So we jumped last week from 2 to chapter 7 in Daniel. So at the end of chapter 2 to where we are now in Daniel chapter 3, the story of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, scholars think that it's probably a 20-year time period that went from when Nebuchadnezzar had his dream until this particular event. Now you're going to notice something. Who's missing?
Daniel.
Daniel.
Yeah.
Daniel is not in this chapter whatsoever. The thought is that he is on assignment for King Nebuchadnezzar somewhere away from Babylon. So he's probably on a long assignment because, and we're going to go through the scripture really verse by verse, but he's probably on a long assignment because to build I think it's a 60 foot, if I have the right, 90 foot by 9 foot, okay, 90 foot tower. Well, that just doesn't happen overnight, okay? And to build a 90-foot tower, that it's probably not solid gold. It's probably wood covered in gold. That's sort of the way that they did it. That, if you go back to Exodus and you hear about the Ark of the Covenant, that's how they built it. They built the box of wood and then covered it with gold. But anyways, this story of worshiping a king, making people worship an idol. We were in Revelation 13 a little bit last week. Guess what happens in the end times? The Antichrist has you worship an idol. That idol is made by the false prophet. A little bit of symbolism there. When the Jews came down, when Moses came down from writing the Ten Commandments, what are they doing? They built up all right. So we're getting a very interesting look right now of how much of a lesson these boys that are now men, again, they're probably in their 37-ish, late 30s. The reason the reason God let Babylon take the Jews into captivity was because of
Worshiping
idolatry. Okay? How far have they come in 20 plus years? Okay? A little bit. But I mean, they're not worshiping the idol. So we see this happening back then. And we see glimpses of this happening in the future. But you know what? The stance that these three men are taking is happening today. I didn't put it up there. I was going to put it up there. ISIS is making people make the choice today. You're a Christian? Wonderful. Become Islamic or. All right? That's the choice. I mean, that's the choice, in essence, that these guys were faced with. Okay? Nebuchadnezzar made no bones about it. All right? And if you read the whole story, because there's more to the fictional narrative in the book, which he has to cut it down, but there's some great interplay there where these guys are high counselors, so they probably knew something was going on, but didn't know what it was, and that's an interesting play.
You know what thought I had though about Daniel being not in this whole chapter? Did he send him away on purpose to be built? Seriously, it occurred to me.
Who knows?
Because if Daniel were there,
Well,
we'll never know. I mean, just saying that.
And that's in the full story in the book, they sort of allude to the fact that Daniel's been gone, and this king, and you're going to see King Nebuchadnezzar, I'm going to tell you right now, gets saved 3 times. All right, the first 2 times didn't take place. You're going to see at the end of this chapter that he's going to bow down to Yahweh. You know, he did in the end of the 2nd chapter after his dream. Well, I didn't take. This one's not going to take either, but a 3rd one will. All right, so we'll get to that one, the madman, later. But so this kind of stuff, an arrogant, boastful king, really is nothing new. Is nothing new. But this isn't just a kid's story. There is death for us, and you're going to hear, 2 words: conviction a lot, and standing up. Okay, standing up. Because these 3 guys stood up, but did it in an amazingly graceful way. All right? So let's keep going. Let's talk about this. Let's look at the verse. So first of all, Nebuchadnezzar's at it again. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an idol of gold, the height of which was 60 cubits, 90 feet, and its width was 6 cubits, 9 feet, and he set it upon the plains of Dura in the province of Babylon. Nothing like building yourself a statue. We all need a statue.
And he could have probably made it out of all gold.
He probably could have. I mean,
But why waste it?
yeah, that's right. Why waste it? And think about it. You know, we're taking a little bit of a leap of assumption here, but I'm pretty sure if I had the dream that he had in chapter 2, that's going to live with me for a while. You know what I mean? That's going to have an effect on me for my lifetime. And so part of what you think of is, well, he's getting older too. You know, if this is 20 years, he's getting older too. And he's probably thinking, well, maybe I'll make a statue that's not just the head of gold, but all of gold. And, you know, maybe that'll take care of this other empire. You know, I mean, you just get the arrogance of it. So then you get this, the call. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to the assembly that the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the province to come to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Okay, imagine this. If this is us today, and we'll just use Donald Trump as an example. There's no comparison between Nebuchadnezzar and Trump, okay? None at all. Totally different people. But that would be him saying, I want Congress, both House and Senate, all my government employees, the Supreme Court, all the federal courts, all the governors, all the state houses and legislatures, all the, let's get down to the cities too. Why don't we get down to that too? The mayors, all those guys. And you know what? Just to keep it going, bring all the county judges in, and the fire department, the police chiefs, and just bring them all in.
Don't
Okay?
forget the UN. We want
No, UN's not. This is not allowed. They're not allowed in.
Okay.
But we're just everybody that holds an official government position in the entire United States. Guys, come on now. We got something to show. That's what Nebuchadnezzar in essence did. All of these little titles were like, it's everybody. I mean, just everybody. So, interestingly enough, everybody gets the invitation. All those people. So who comes? We'll just read it again. Then the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the province were assembled for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up, and they stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Basically, if you got an invitation from Nebuchadnezzar, you're coming. Hello! You're showing up. You know what I mean? You're showing up. It wasn't this, do I return my RSVP? No. You show up. All right? You got no other choice but to show up. So, now we get the festival. Everybody's in Babylon. You got, it's like Mardi Gras. You know what I mean? You can't walk down the streets of New Orleans, all right? Bourbon Street's packed, all right? Well, that's what the streets of Babylon are like. You've got all of these people throughout the entire empire that are here, and they don't know why they're here. I mean, they're like, the dude sent me and said to come, and if I didn't come, he'd probably cut my head off. But here we go. So then you get this wonderful, wonderful message. I can hear it now. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, to you, the command is given, O people, nations, and men of every language, that at the moment you hear the sound of and this is, we're getting a little specific here, the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon. What is a trigon? The psalter, the bagpipes, and all kinds of music, You are to fall on your face, fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. There is absolutely just an abundance of humility in Nebuchadnezzar at this point. I'm just a nice guy, right? Guys, come on, we're going to have a party. Oh, by the way, before we have the party, you're going to hear a couple of musical instruments play. Bow down and worship my image, okay? Not arrogant at all. Not at all. So what happens? We're given the little the disclaimer. You don't have to, everything has a little disclaimer. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Again, apparently this is not a optional thing. You know what I'm saying? So not only do you have no option to come or not come to the invitation, but you really have no option to the fact that if you don't bow down, you got yourself a little bit of a problem.
Hot time in the old town.
Hot time.
It's a hot time in the old town tonight. That's right. So, what happens? And again, we're very specific here. Therefore, at that time, when all the people heard the sounds of the horns, flutes, lyres, trigon. What's a trigon? I don't know what a trigon is. The psalter, the bagpipes, and all kinds of music, all the people, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. Great. Except, for this reason, at that time, certain Chaldeans came forward and brought charges against the Jews. They responded and said to Nebuchadnezzar the king, "O king, live forever." Well, of course you're going to say that to the king. So we've got the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans, let's just think about this for just a moment, because this, again, is fairly humorous. We ended chapter 2, and the Chaldeans, the astrologers, the magicians, and all that, got their butts saved. More than their butts. By these guys. Do you sense a little jealousy going on here? All right? You've got Daniel, Belteshazzar, all right? Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that have been put into extremely high positions. Daniel's off somewhere, probably he's not in the Empire of Babylon right now, because otherwise he'd have been back, okay? He's probably in a foreign court somewhere representing King Nebuchadnezzar. That tells you how important he is. And so there's some jealousy. You can just sort of read between the lines that there's some jealousy. So the Chaldeans are like, aha, we got it. And you know what? We're going to see in a couple of chapters later, when we get into the Medes and Persian Empire, that they're still after Daniel. Daniel didn't get a chance to get burned up here. He's just going to get eaten, opportunity to get eaten by lion. No big deal though. All right? So, these guys come up, and of course, what do you say to a king like King Nebuchadnezzar? "Oh, king, live forever." Unless you don't want to, and that would be good with us. So, "Oh, you, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon," I don't know what a trigon is, "psalter and bagpipes and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image." I think he knew. You know what I mean? He gave the decree. But we got to go through all that, right? So, but whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Well, thank you guys for clearing that up with Nebuchadnezzar. I'm pretty sure he didn't know. So, now you get him, these Chaldeans going right after it. "There are certain Jews whom you, Nebuchadnezzar, appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon." There's the jealousy part. You put these guys up, Nebi. We got a problem now. Namely, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. "Oh, these men, O king, have disregarded you." That's one. So we've got 3 charges. They disregarded you. They did not serve your God, or worship the golden idol which you set up. So they disregarded you, they did not serve your God, and they did not worship the golden idol. All right? So Nebi's upset. You don't mind if I call him Nebi, right? All right, so
As long as he doesn't mind.
well, we'll talk in heaven. Then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then these men were brought before the king. And then Nebuchadnezzar responded to them and said, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you did not serve my God or worship the golden image that I had set up?" Hold on a second. Did you notice something? They brought 3 charges against these guys. Nebuchadnezzar knew that the first one wasn't right. All right? And that he was only concerned about you did not worship my God or bow down. That tells you right there that Nebuchadnezzar had an incredible respect and fondness for these guys. They had served him. He knew by skipping the disregarded you, he knew they weren't disregarding him. Now, you can think of this, and the book alludes to this, that this is a political situation. All right? He's trying to, the Empire of Babylon has expanded so quick that he's trying to bring unity to an empire that is a bunch of different cultures that they've conquered. So everybody's holding on to their different religions, their different gods, their different, behaviors, whatever, however you want to say it. So he's trying to figure out a way how to bring unity to the empire and make it one. Because go ahead.
This is killing me. Do you think it's possible, because we all know that Nebi's on his way to being crazy.
Yes.
Right? He's getting there.
He's getting there.
So, and Daniel's gone.
Yeah.
And he was like his chief advisor, right?
Mhm.
So is it possible, do you think that maybe in some twisted kind of way that he thought that what he was doing was like, because he's like, okay, Daniel's got it going on, of course. So, he's worshiping his one God. And we have all this fighting and everything going on in Babylon because everybody's worshiping all these other gods. So maybe he thought, like in some twisted kind of way, that, okay, well, if I do what Daniel does and make one God for everybody to worship, I'll bring them all together. And
Oh, absolutely.
so,
He's a warped human being.
yeah. So he may have thought that like he was doing like Daniel does, he could just like figure out, and since Daniel wasn't there to tell him like, he's way far off base, that,
Yeah, because we're going to find out that when we get into chapter 4, this guy has a mental disorder. I know it wasn't obvious before this point, but he seriously has a mental disorder. And you know what? That's not, when you look especially at the emperors, when you get into, let's think about England, okay? Okay. With yeah, I mean, exactly. I mean, you can only have kids with your sister so many times before this doesn't work out real well. Okay? The bloodline gets a little thin. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I mean, not only is he thinking that he's going to fix this problem, but he's not sane. And that's, I mean, I think you're going to see that when you take this and throw it into like the preview of the Antichrist. I think you're going to see a lot of the same similarities. They're going to be nuts. They're going to be arrogant. They're going to think they got it all. And the weird thing about that is, this book, this Bible, with all of the prophecy, well, it's published. You know what I'm saying? So, like, if I'm not the Antichrist, but if I'm the Antichrist, I'm like probably reading up. Oh, I'm not going to win.
You're thinking you're going to find some way around.
Yeah, Yeah, it's like,
Crazy enough to find a different way.
Anyways, yeah. So the key here is Nebi. He knew that these guys didn't disregard him and that they honored him. Okay, so he took that first statement and just threw it out, which is interesting. All right, which is very interesting. So all he cared about was you weren't worshiping my God and bowing down to the image. And interesting, we use the word worship. He wanted a religious experience. I mean, he didn't want people just bowing to the image. He wanted them worshiping the image. Nebuchadnezzar wanted to be God. Just a little ego problem there, but he'll deal with it. But here's the cool thing. Again, it's amazing when you read this next part. It says, Nebuchadnezzar keeps going on. He goes, now, if you are ready, at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon. I don't know what a trigon is.
I think it's
So-
a harp.
Or is it the zither?
No, I've been practicing this. I
Yeah,
don't know
right.
what it is. I don't want to know what it is. This is a spiel, all right? The bagpipes and all kinds of music to fall down and worship the image that I have made very well. He's giving them a second chance. This is sort of unheard of. I mean, because if you remember, they were going to immediately throw you into the burning furnace. So Nebuchadnezzar's going, I value you guys. Look, work with me here a little bit. All right?
Very well. Just do what I'm asking you to do.
Yeah, just very well. It'll be great. We'll just forget this all happens. But, we gotta always love the buts. But, if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, and this is the mockery that you get. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? Now, if it's me, I'm going, Nebi, you remember that dream? Who told you about the dream? I'm pretty sure if my God can put a dream in your head and tell you the entire future of the age of the Gentiles, and we can not only tell you what the dream was, which apparently you couldn't remember, but our God also gave you the interpretation. What's a little fire? No big deal. But no, Neb's mocking. He's saying, what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? You can. Yeah, he found out first. So this is the... Oh, you okay?
He knows what to do.
You're welcome.
Boy, you scared her. Anna is getting into this one.
Well, now when the next time you read your Bible, you will know exactly what happened. You okay? All right, I'll try to stop making jokes.
Calm down.
Calm down a little bit. All right, so now you get the best line ever. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king. This is the best thing ever. The best thing ever. O Nebi, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter. If it be so, our God, our Yahweh, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire. And he will deliver us, and he will deliver us out of your hands, O king. Our God will. Always.
Okay.
But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O King, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Whoa. Boy, let's learn a lesson right there. Because, and we'll talk, when we get to the end, we'll recap a lot of this, but in all seriousness, do we have that in us right now? Because let me tell you right now, as Christians in the United States, we are wimps. We are weak and we are wimps. We sit there and go, we're being persecuted because they won't let us put a manger in the park. Okay, we are weak. Because putting a manger in a park, and that's not persecution, all right? Sitting there going, you can't pray in school, in public school. Now, we don't like that, but that's not persecution. Getting killed, all right, getting your property taken away from you, that starts to become persecution. And, the times are, they be a-changing, and in essence, there's going to be a time that we're truly persecuted. We don't know. We don't have a clue what persecution is. When you're in Syria and you're a Christian and you're pulled out of your house and you're told, hey, you're either going to become convert and tell us that Muhammad, Allah, or we're going to kill you. That's persecution. And here's the thing. I truly believe that the rapture happens before the tribulation. I'll fully tell you, I may be wrong. All right? And if we read what the book of Revelation says, true persecution, true decisions are going to happen to people that are believers. Whether we're here, I personally hope that I'm interpreting the scripture correctly and we're not. But there are going to be people that are converted, that are Christians, and that we know are going to have to make a decision. The Antichrist is going to put up an image of himself, and the false prophet is going to make people worship. And if you take the mark of the beast, which, think about it right now, the mark of the beast allows you to do commerce. It isn't that far off right now to put a chip in your hand that is your credit card banking information. Okay? That's not, 50, 100 years ago, that was far-fetched. Today, I got an Apple Watch that I go like this, and it takes my credit card information. When we see that Apple's coming out with an implant, I'm not saying Apple's the Antichrist. I'm just saying that's a tool, you know what I mean? That says, hey, put this little microchip in your hand, and boy, look at all the conveniences you have. Well, that could very well be the mark of the beast. All right, that controls you now. That's not craziness anymore. I mean, that's not out of the realm of possibility. It used to be when they talked about the whole world would be able to hear the same thing at the same time. All right, I'm paraphrasing. 50 years ago, you're like, yeah, right. That would never happen. Today, it's happening. I mean, if there's a 9/11. Take 9/11. Everybody had that on their TV across the whole world at the same time. We've got it now. All right, we've got it now.
You walk around with it.
You walk around with it. Exactly right. So I mean, the courage that these guys had was beyond belief, and we think of it as a kid's story because it's an easy narrative to talk to kids about. But there's so much depth there of how we need to be. Think of how much Christians have compromised. We know what the scripture says. Jesus tells us about certain things that are very clear cut, yet because we live in this world, to hold those convictions becomes very difficult, so we compromise. We compromise. And we just do it little by little by little, and then all of a sudden, we're no longer following what Christ said. We're really watered down everything that we've got so that we don't make anybody in the world upset. We are different than the world. We are not of the world. So we should be extremely uncomfortable with what's going on in the world. Okay, that doesn't mean we're vocal and taking axes to people. But what that means is we should not conform to this world because we're not of it. We've been doing that as Christians, bit by bit by bit. And our expectations are also that the world should act like a Christian. The world won't act like a Christian. So when we see the secular world acting immoral, it shouldn't be a surprise to us. We should be like, yeah. Because they don't know any better. They may know Scripture. The devil knows Scripture. But they don't follow it. They don't respect it. That's where we have become wimps. Wimps. And being wimps now with the little stuff is going to make compromise so much easier. We should never be afraid to die. Because absence from the body is present with the Lord. Okay, I'm good with that. You know what I mean? Because if we don't hold the convictions when it comes to the point that our lives are at stake, and mind you, we may never, ever, ever experience that. God, I hope we don't. I hope none of us have to experience that. But if you do, you got to know what you're going to do. And honestly, what fear do you have? If somebody says, if somebody walked up to me and said, I'm going to shoot you in the head unless you renounce your religion, I'm like, okay. Because you don't win. They think they're going to win by taking away our beliefs. If you take away this earthly body, I'm going to be with Jesus. All right? Huh. Isn't that what we're working for anyways? Now, mind you, I do not want to die. I've said it before. I'm not afraid of dying. I just don't want to be there when it happens. You know what I'm saying?
But what's the other issue with Islamic world is their children.
Yes.
It's their wife. We're taking your wife if you don't do this. We're killing your kids. It's a different thing then when you look at it. It's just you. It's one thing.
And it is, but if you raise your family right,
Yeah, but it's hard.
your flesh.
Yeah.
Oh, listen, it would be tragic if our family was pulled out from us and we had to watch them suffer. It's almost worse to watch your family suffer than it is for you. I mean, absolutely. But if you raise your family up, you know. And I hope we never have to do that. I hope we never have to see that. But it could be. And I'm going to, let me switch real quick, because I'm going to read you, he talks about a chaplain in World War I. His name is Studi Kennedy. And I have the book that this came from, so I'm going to read it out of the book, not out of his. I'm going to give you the full thing. But this is, when we're raising our kids, when we're raising our families, this is what it's about. And he says, especially when we teach our kids how to pray, he's talking about, this is the prayer I want my son to learn to say for me. And this is when he's out in the battlefield as a chaplain in World War II. I want him to say for me is not, keep daddy safe. But God, make daddy brave. And if he has hard things to do, make him strong to do them. Life and death don't matter, Pat, my son. Right and wrong do. Daddy dead is daddy still. But daddy dishonoring before God is something awful, too bad for words. Now, I love this. I suppose you'd like to put in a little bit about safety too, old chap. And Mom would too. Well, put it in. But afterwards, always afterwards. Because it does not really matter near so much. Every man, woman, and child should be taught to put first things first in prayer, before both in peace and in war, and that I believe is where we have failed. That's powerful. The book is called Hardest Times. I've got it on Kindle, and it's basically 10 or 11 of his letters from his experience in World War II as a chaplain. And I haven't read them all. What's that? World War I. World War I. Yes.
No, what is it?
Yeah. But that's powerful. When we're praying, it's not this. Lord, make it so I don't have temptations. We all are tempted. You know what I mean? And temptations don't come from God. They're trials. All right? Don't pray, not to be tempted, as much as pray not to take the temptation. All right? Because, when you read James, he's telling you God's with you. And that's what we're going to learn here. God's with them during the temptations. It would have been extremely easy for Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to go, this doesn't really matter. Okay, that's bad. It doesn't really matter. But they would have dishonored God. They would have dishonored God. And boy, that's the worst. That's what you don't want to do. Now, God will always forgive you. But one of the things that makes us wimpy Christians, the result of us being wimpy Christians, is we become hypocrites to people that aren't Christians. Because we don't live, we don't show what we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be made in Christ's image, but we compromise to the society. And trust me, we all do. We all do. We don't mean to. And the wonderful thing is God has grace and he has mercy. All right? But that's where we come across this wimpy. Sorry. I got you on it down. Let's get back to that. All right, so let's get this thing wrapped up because we've got some more lessons to learn. You remember we talked before, Nebuchadnezzar has just a little bit of a temper. All right, you remember his magicians came in and he's like, kill them all. They can't tell me what's going on, just kill them all. So then Nebuchadnezzar was full of wrath and his face expression was altered towards Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Altered. I love that. His facial expression was altered. You ever see a red-faced yelling lunatic? His face was altered. And he answered by giving the order to heat the furnace 7 times more than it usually was heated. That'll show him. What were you going to say?
Well, why was it, well, you're going to get it in a minute, but why did they say it should have been 7 times less? Once you think of that at the end.
Well, here's the thing.
I was confused on that.
Well, if you want to punish somebody and you want to make them suffer, turn it down. Be a frog. You know what I'm saying?
Let it take longer.
Take longer.
It'll take longer.
I was just not falling for that one.
I mean, so if you heat it 7 times higher than it
Go
is,
fast.
you're going to burn up quicker.
Okay.
Well,
Almost sense in Daniel.
yeah. I mean, because, so we use this as an example. I remember in Denham Springs, our first week there, I gave us a little send-off. And it's just like, Nebuchadnezzar was stupid. Because why would you do this? He's in a fit of rage, not thinking. Just not thinking. So I love this. He commanded certain valiant warriors. That's what we need. I got 3 40-year-old Jewish, basically administrators that have probably been living high on the hog. All right? So I'm going to get my valiant warriors because nobody else can take care of these guys. They're bad. Who are in the army, in his army, to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothing, and were cast into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. Okay, let's stop for a second. Why are they putting clothes on them?
No, they didn't know the difference.
Okay, was it cold outside? Did they not want them to get a chill?
You don't see the naked body.
I don't know. I mean, if you think about it, you want to humiliate these guys. Why in the world are you putting clothes on them? You know, it doesn't make any sense.
I think it's because he's putting on a show.
He's putting
That's
on a
why
show.
he commanded it be hotter, so
Yeah.
all the people would be, whoa, and
It's-
then make a bigger
Good
show.
point.
Yeah.
Shock and awe.
Maybe everything of their possessions that belongs to them needs to go with them, you know? So there's not anything left behind, but, you know, they've cast lots for Jesus' clothes, maybe there's nothing left in his mind.
I don't get it. Okay, so keep going, because I'm just pointing it out because I think it's the craziest thing in the world. You know what I'm saying? I mean, why would you do that? It doesn't make any sense. For this reason, because the king's command was urgent and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flames of the fire slew those men who were carrying up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. So imagine this in your mind, okay? Because it had to be funny. All right? You have this big show, and you're exactly right. It's a show. You got everybody called back in, all those people from the government called back in to get a good view of the show. We're going to get these 3 people in the burning fire, all right? And so they're carrying them up, and they're probably carrying them up to a point that they're dropping them down. But there had to be some opening, all right? So think of them coming down the chimney chute or something like that, okay? So they're walking these guys up, and the guards, the valiant soldiers from his army, burst into flames, all right? Cool. All right? Burst into flames. And so, what does Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego do? Do they just go, well, okay, we'll just keep walking up to the top and jump in? I mean, they probably
were already going down the subway.
they're probably already going down the subway.
And the soldiers fell
And just,
on the outside that harmlessly landed on the tarmac below.
there you go. So apparently that wasn't in the script for Nebi when he was planning this whole thing. His event planner was probably going, gonna get fired for this one. So then, and this is the great part, then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste, and he said to his high officials, was it not 3 men that we cast bound in the midst of the fire? And they replied to the king, certainly, O king. He said, look, I see 4 men loose and walking about in the midst of the fire without any harm. And the appearance of a 4th is like the son of the gods. Not the Son of the gods. The Son of God.
I know.
This is what you call a Christophany. You are seeing Nebuchadnezzar is seeing Jesus 580 years before he was born. Now, if you read Psalm 91, he talks about basically going under the wings of the Lord, the eagle's wings, and for refuge. Well, this is what Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego were doing. They're just standing there going, this doesn't hurt. This doesn't hurt. And they're just looking around going, whoa, cool. I got to tell you, it doesn't say it in the scriptures, but I'm just going to put it in the scripture. Because it's my imagination. I'm just seeing them go, woo, baby! They're just dancing in the fire. Okay, just dancing in the fire. And the Lord's like, go ahead, guys, dance away. I can just see him over top of them, arms out, nothing hitting them, and just going, dance away, boys. Just dance away. Have some fun in here. That's what I see. Now, I know that's not scripture. But that's my mind. This is nothing more than Jesus protecting these boys, protecting his people. And you know what? They had the courage and the faith to go into that fire. Think about the story. If they would have said, all right, I'll bow. They wouldn't have been under the protection of the Lord in that fire. So when you go through trials, temptations, you're going into the fire. And that's okay, because the Lord is with you. The Lord's going to sit there and hold on to you. And if you are in his will and in his walking and being led in his spirit, he's just holding on to you. And those temptations, those fiery darts are just going around. He's going, don't worry about it. I got you. I got you. All right? What happens, though, is when we sit over here, the Lord's sitting here like this, and he's trying to hug you and cover you up, and you're going, no, I want to go over here. The darts, they're cool. No, stay right underneath it, and that's what Psalm 91 talks about. Just abide in him. And what that means sometimes is you're looking out, and you're going, those guys are getting hurt. 10,000s and thousands are being trampled on because they're not under the wing of the Lord. So let's see what Nebi has to say about this. All right. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. Wouldn't it have been neat if Nebuchadnezzar came near to the flaming fires and caught on and exploded? No, he said, different story. That's going to happen, but not to him. And he responds and says, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out! You're servant of the Most High God, and come here. So he's asking Jesus to come out also. Jesus doesn't come out, just these guys. So then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego come out of the midst of the fire. And the satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regards to these men that the fire had no effect on their body of these men, nor was their hair on their heads singed, nor was their trousers damaged, nor had they the smell of fire coming upon them. We live in Texas. We smoke everything. Okay? Y'all have been out there. Y'all have been out there by the smoker, or on a lovely evening where you have a little fire pit going on. What happens? What do you smell? You smell like smoke. All right, now, if it's oak, mesquite, or hickory, you smell good. All right, and you put some barbecue sauce, but you smell like smoke. These guys are in the midst of the fire. They put all of their clothes on them, and nothing is affected by the fire. Why do you think?
Except the ropes that they
Except the
belong to
ropes.
Babylon.
That's right. Except the ropes. Because that belonged to Babylon. But why?
Because they belong to God.
That's right. So let us hear how Nebuchadnezzar gets saved for the second time. Nebi responded and said, "Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielding up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their God." And so Nebi has a little bit of mud on his face because he just brought all of his officials out to witness this. So he's got to make mud, or you can think of it as lemons, he's got to make lemons into lemonade. So, therefore, I decree, this is Nebi, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive, offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in his normal style shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, insomuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way.
I think he's working both sides of the street.
You don't think he's covered his bases, do you?
Well, you said he'd been saved. Now I don't think he has been. I think he's just
He's working. Well, he is working both sides of the street. I will agree with you on that.
Nebuchadnezzar had two ways of dismemberment. One that could throw you out of the membership, and also cut off your feet.
Yep. And we yes.
But each of us needs to beware that in the course of those few years between 2 and 3 in our life, the very same thing can happen to us. We get so caught up in whatever it is, computers or getting a better job or doing all of this or making money, and boom, we're just exactly where Nebuchadnezzar is.
Well, I hope not.
Well, you know what I mean.
Oh yeah.
Because you bought into it.
Yep.
You're still going way the other extreme.
So Nebuchadnezzar slid for 20 years, and he's going to do it again. He's going to do it again.
Do you think he put the statue of himself in storage, or?
That's an interesting thing. What did he do with it? Because that's a big statue.
Well, why didn't
Well, he's still
leave
saying
it?
it's their God, not his.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Right. You can still worship that if you want to, but under the
Yep.
umbrella.
So then, let me just end this because and then we'll close this up. Because this is where Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego walk off the page of Scripture.
I know, they're not for him.
They just walk off the page of Scripture. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon.
Mine says they promoted.
Yeah,
Mine.
prosper, promote, yeah.
Yeah.
But they walk
Oh.
off. They walk off the Scripture, off the page of Scripture, not to be heard of again.
Don't you think they did enough?
I know.
For real? Yeah.
They made their point.
That's right. And what a point it was.
You know, Chris, I never knew, and you've heard this story and you tell it to your kids, I never knew about, I knew the fourth, but I never thought about it. I never thought much about it because I haven't read this in years.
Yeah.
That was Jesus or God or
Thought
Christ.
as an angel.
An angel, well, they make reference in here about an angel somewhere.
Well, here's.
But I never really thought that connected.
I don't want to go too far down the rabbit trail because I'm actually on time, which is slightly amazing.
No.
But Jesus shows up in the Old Testament way more than you'll ever realize. the angel of the Lord. That's Jesus. Jesus was there when the angel of the Lord told Abraham that he and Sarah would have a baby. He was there to stop the hand of Abraham to kill Isaac. He was there with Moses. He's been there a lot more than you think. He was here. It's just he wasn't Jesus at that point. You know, they hadn't named him yet. He was the angel.
So you're saying that if it's talking about Michael, they say Michael. If they're talking about Gabriel, they say Gabriel. But
when they say angel of the Lord, now again, that's an interpretation. You know, you got to take it. But angel of the Lord, when you hear those, that's Christophany. I said it really good the first time. Christophany. Yes, that's an appearance of God. And now he's in a spirit form. He is not in a physical form at that point. You know, he is a spirit being. And now spirit beings can manifest themselves into physical form, but he's not a man until he's born. You know. So, Christophany. There's a wonderful book out there that talks through all of the appearances of Christ in the Old Testament. Because the Old Testament is nothing more than shooting us to the cross. And the New Testament is looking back at the cross and then forward to his second coming. So it's a beautiful thing. So let's end this thing with a couple of things. That guy. We don't stand down. So we talk about convictions and things. So these guys didn't stand down. Because if they stood down, that would have been cowardice. They'd be cowards if they stood down. They didn't stand aside. Because that would compromise. Boy, don't we stand aside. They didn't stand against. They weren't arrogant. That would be contention. What they did is they stood up, stand up. And that's conviction and that's courage. If you go and you look at the armor of God in Ephesians 6, we're not to attack. We're not to retreat. We're to stand firm. Stand up. And that's the lesson. That is Ephesians 6 with the full armor of God. Forget about the armor, but know what you're supposed to do. Stand in his might. That's what these guys did in faith. And the lessons, very, very interesting when we talk about what we learned from this. The lesson from the past is one of an inspiring example. The book shows that in Daniel's day, there was faithful individuals who stood up for what they believed, even when the penalty was death. There are no finer examples of courage under fire in the entire Bible than this. And really, they started out in chapter 1 when they said, can't eat from the table. Chapter 2. Yeah, just give me veggies. I'm on ideal protein, right? You know. But I mean, they stood firm there. They stood the gap with Daniel by praying in chapter 2 to get the answer from God for the dream. And here they stood firm. And again, what a lesson. They may not have been idolatrous when they were growing up, but the nation as a whole was. And that word idol, we think of as a thing. But an idol can be anything that takes you away from God. Okay, so an idol can be fantasy football. An idol can be your phone. You know what I mean? What's standing in the way between you and God and in your relationship with God? That's your idol. All right? The lesson for the present is that we must determine in advance, and this is tough, how we will respond and try. Now, I love this story, and I don't know where the story came from, but it's from a youth pastor that basically said, you need to determine if you're going to have premarital sex before you get in the backseat of the car. Because if you were trying to make the decision in the backseat of the car, you've got a problem. All right? Well, it's the same thing here. I hope we're never put in the position where we have to make a life and death decision on our faith. I hope and pray that none of us ever have to do that. But if we do, you better think about that now and not when the guy has a gun, a knife, or an axe. You know what I'm saying? And it really is the easiest decision in the world. Go ahead, and if you think shooting or killing me is going to do anything, go for it. Because at the end of the I'm not just going to stand there and take it if I have a choice. You know what I mean? I'll probably pull out my 9mm and empty the clip a couple of times and make sure that I get away. Because I'd rather take him out than have him take me out. But at the same time, we should have no fear. Death has already been taken care of as a believer in Christ. I mean, that's a done deal. Now, again, I don't want to die. Just don't want to be where I want to happen. But I mean, you know, it's okay. You know what I mean? It's okay. So, you know, we just have to know that in our head. We got to know. We got to think through that. All right? We got to think. That's why you carry life insurance. It's not for you. It's for the person. It's for the person that you leave behind. You know what I'm saying? So the last thing is the lesson for the future is that we look forward to His second coming. All right? So listen, this world, and I'm just going to use the colloquialism, can go to hell in a handbasket, and it doesn't matter. We know how it ends. And it ends with us being in heaven. And we don't talk about heaven, by the way. We don't talk enough about heaven. All right? Because, you know, some people will sit there and go, heaven's boring. You know what? If that's boring, I'm in for boring. All right?
Sign me up.
You know, sign me up. I mean, we get glimpses. We don't get a full story of heaven. But we get, can you imagine a place where every loved one that you have, every person of all time that is a follower of Christ, is in perfect unity, no sin, and all for the common purpose of worshiping our Creator. Okay, that sounds really, really good. Okay, and God tells us, He sits there and says, I want you to be with me. I am going and preparing a place for you so that where I am, you will be also. So He wants us to be with Him. Man, that's good. I mean, that's good. So all this stuff going on, let it go on. You know, the world's going to... Yes. But you know what? He's coming back. And we're not going to solve our problems. We're going to try to make things a little better. That's what we try to do. But when He comes back, when Jesus comes back to take this world, which He holds the deed of it now in His hand, and we are His bride, let the party begin, baby.
Get out of the handbasket.
Get out of the handbasket. So, there ended tonight. Was that better than a children's lesson?
Yeah, well, amen.
Oh, stand up. This is your sending verse. In fact, let me turn around and let's say it together. Do not fear, for I have redeemed you. I have called you by name. You are mine. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And through the rivers, they will not overflow you. When you walk through the fire, right, get out of here. See you next week. There you go. Love ya.
There wasn't anything else